Hello and welcome to the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra's Mocktails and Masterpieces Summer 2021 edition. My name is David Murray. I am the host for this particular Mocktails and Masterpieces. I'm the principal bass of the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, stepping into this role on behalf of Matthew Kramer, our music director. I'd like to introduce our two guests today. We have Sarah Page and Hector del Curto, and I'd like them just to introduce themselves and say just a few words about what they do for the chamber orchestra. Sarah, would you like to start?
Hi, it's great to be here. This year's it's had its challenges, but it's been really great stepping into the role as acting concertmaster. And one of the things that I was able to do was perform Winter with you guys. So I grew up in Indianapolis, actually, so I'm really familiar with everybody that's playing in the chamber orchestra. I did my undergrad at the University of Indianapolis, went on to a master's at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and really just been spending my time playing in orchestras. And so it's just been such a pleasure playing with the chamber orchestra so far.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us. How many seasons have you been with us now, Sarah?
I believe two or three. Yeah, this year was strange. It may be half. We can count as half.
And you didn't know what you were getting into. None of us did. And then all of a sudden, you've been our concertmaster for the year, and it's been fantastic. Thank you for all the work.
It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
So, Hector, welcome. Welcome back to the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's great to have performed a concert with the orchestra, and then, you know, a few weeks later, get to meet them again. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm a bandoneon player. I'm from Argentina, and I got the pleasure to perform the Four Seasons by Piazzolla with the chamber orchestra.
And it was a pleasure. I've played this piece several times over the years now, and it's a little different format every time, and I love it. I really relish all the energy, all the beauty in the Piazzolla. So what I'd like to talk about today is maybe comparing a little bit, contrasting the Piazzolla Four Seasons, which we recently did, with Vivaldi's Four Seasons, which were obviously from a much earlier era. And Sarah, you played the Winter season with us on our December concert. I think we recorded in November, but it aired in December. So maybe Sarah, talk a little bit about the Vivaldi Winter.
Yeah, so Vivaldi Winter is probably one of the most famous concertos in the repertoire. Even people that aren't really familiar with classical music have heard Vivaldi Winter or one of the Four Seasons. So it's actually one of the earliest examples of programmatic music. So Vivaldi in the music writes specific phrases that correspond to the story that he's trying to tell through the music. We don't really know who wrote the poem. There's some debate on that, but some people actually think it might have been Vivaldi himself. So it's really amazing what he does with the textures of the orchestra, the different violin lines that in the solo as well. If you read the poem, I mean, there are things like chattering teeth, and you can hear that with collegno, which is when we're using the bow part of the wooden part of our bow. There's stamping of feet. There's wind howling, and it's just all these swirling lines happening. So it's a very exciting piece, but it also has, I think, one of the most tender and beautiful middle movements, which represents, there's pizzicato in the orchestra, which represents the rain falling outside or the snow falling outside, and the violin line, the solo violin line, is representative of a conversation by a warm fire. So it's a really incredible piece, and really innovative for the time period that it was written.
I know it's really programmatic, and that wasn't something that people were doing in the 17th and early 18th century. So Hector, would you like to talk a little bit about the Four Seasons by Piazzolla, maybe specifically Winter, since we were just talking about the Vivaldi Winter. Do you find that Piazzolla is programmatic in the same way?
I actually don't, but this piece was well, the Four Seasons were written in different times. So the first one was Verano Porteño, was written in 1965, and then he wrote Invierno Porteño in 1969, and then he wrote Otoño and Primavera in 1970s. So I don't think it has many things that will tell you direct images of a season, but Invierno is one of the ones that you could have a much more direct feeling of what the winter in Buenos Aires is. You know, it starts with a very slow and beautiful melody, and it's kind of, you have to think that our winter is not the same winter as here. So our winter will be more like the fall in the U.S., well, in parts of the U.S. But it's that, you know, it's a slow moving thing. You don't have to run for the snow, but it's cold and it's gray, and it has a lot of beauty in a sense that you can go into a cafe, sit down, and cafes were the places where most of the lyrics and the tango writers went to sit and compose or write the poems. So that's the feeling that I get from Invierno Porteño. I don't like to put images like, say, Primavera Porteña has a fugue at the beginning and that will represent the flowers blooming and things like that, because I don't know what Astor Piazzolla was thinking in that moment. I think it's more of feelings than images directly.
Hector, could you talk a little bit just about Piazzolla and maybe your experience as an Argentinian, because he was an Argentinian composer. And of course, he only died in, what, 1992. So certainly more recent. I know we have recordings of him playing his music. I wish we had Vivaldi playing his music. That'd be really cool, but that doesn't exist. But what could you tell us? What can you share your own personal ideas and experiences with Piazzolla and his music?
Well, Astor Piazzolla was a fighter. From the beginning to the end, he fought for his music. But also, when he was 5 years old, he came to the US and he lived in New York. And his family moved. And then he went back and forth with Argentina. He suffered a lot of criticism because of his music. And he also, his family suffered not having money to eat. He had to sell houses, and you know, he was always challenged by everything that he had to do, and he never gave up. And it's not until the late part of his life that he gets some recognition, and it's not until his death that he became what he is right now. Unfortunately, the recognition that Astor Piazzolla has now is nothing. It's actually much more than what he had while he was alive. So he was a character, a very strong character, and that's what drove him to keep going and never give up. They say that he used to get depressed when the critics will talk about his work as destroying tango, and then he will not have audiences in his performances in Argentina. So he will decide to leave the country again, leave his family, came back to the US and do his music. That's all he wanted to do. He studied in France with Nadia Boulanger. He grew up in US listening to jazz, and all those influences made his music the music that he called contemporary music from Buenos Aires. He didn't want to call it tango at some point so people will not criticize him. But it is tango. There is no doubt about it. It's new tango.
So, I mean, it's amazing to think that his music was criticized because it's so popular now. I mean, just with everybody across all different different demographic groups. It's really amazing. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about Vivaldi? I mean, besides being a great composer, he was an amazing violinist. Maybe what are some of the challenges in his music, maybe specifically Winter, some of the musical and technical things that violinists have to deal with?
Out of all of the seasons, at least personally, I think the Vivaldi Winter is the most difficult for intonation. That sounds silly, but it's just so exposed. It also goes, I think, higher than a lot of the other concerti in the group of four. And so that presents a lot of challenges, and also tuning within the orchestra as well. So that was actually one of the biggest challenges for me. And then also transitions. Transitions in general are always moments where they can either, turn together or go like that. But the transitions in this piece are really quick. And there are some pretty notorious passages where if you go and listen to recordings, very few are together in cadence points as well when we come to a close. And also one of the challenges, I think, because the pieces are so famous and there are so many recordings of them, how as a soloist do you come with something fresh and something new? And I really tried, because this is more programmatic, I really tried to take what the story was or the picture, to choose the tempos, to choose the characters and colors. And another really incredible thing about Vivaldi's writing in these particular concertos is the colors in the orchestra part, not just the violin. I love the chamber music aspect of these, of the Winter. So in the orchestra as well, and maybe you actually as a member in the orchestra can say what your experience is in that, the chamber music element of that, kind of going back and forth.
Oh yeah, it's I love playing continuo. I love playing music from the Baroque period. The bass line is so important. I mean, everything's built on that bass line, and then moves up from there. At least, maybe I'm a little biased. But I love playing continuo because it's a different style than playing pretty much any later music. Thinking about the emphasis on certain beats and really bringing out the melody in that bass line. Knowing when we're accompanying and when we can bring out a little bit the melodic elements of it. And then, really when to stay back, sometimes the bass cuts out altogether and only the cello's playing. So it's a whole different style. In the Piazzolla, I feel like I can really lunge into it. It's more romanticized kind of music, so I can add lots of vibrato and really beef up the sound a little bit a different way than I can do with the Vivaldi. So it's a really different approach because it's a different style, totally different centuries. So, well, let's take a listen to some of the Vivaldi Winter and then some of the Piazzolla Four Seasons. And so we'll take a break and listen to those now and then come back and do a little more discussion. Okay, and we are back. I'd like to talk for just a minute before we hear the Piazzolla about this particular arrangement by Pablo Ziegler. Hector, how did this particular arrangement come about?
Well, first of all, Piazzolla composes pieces thinking about the musicians already. He never composed a piece thinking that somebody would arrange it and play with different instrumentation. So he wrote for his quintet, and in his quintet was a electric guitar, was a violin, bass, piano, and bandoneon. So one of the problems that you have when something is conceived that way is how to make justice of what was written, changing the instrumentation. And actually, Pablo Ziegler was his pianist. He performed from 1978 to 1988 with Astor Piazzolla. And I'm fortunate to have been his bandoneon player since 1990s now, so more than 30 years. And he actually wrote the orchestrations for me to perform with the orchestra, and he respected every single element of the music that Piazzolla wrote. So it's more than an arrangement, is an orchestration. There are not many things changed from the original quintet. So it's the challenge is how to balance one bandoneon against the whole orchestra playing with you. So that's mainly the challenge on this orchestration. But he actually knew very well everything, every element that Piazzolla used in terms of harmony, in terms of orchestration, in terms of his style of writing. So I think Pablo Ziegler was one of the perfect people to have come up with this orchestration.
Wow. I mean, it's like you have sort of a direct contact almost with Piazzolla himself that way. And I know, Sarah, that it's not the same with Vivaldi. Goes back a little too far. So let's take a little listen now to some Piazzolla. Well, that was beautiful. That was really wonderful. So just in closing, I'd like to ask Sarah, maybe what your reaction to Piazzolla is, having performed the Vivaldi, but also the Piazzolla, and maybe your reaction to Piazzolla.
It was actually a lot of fun to do both of them in the same season. That's kind of rare unless you find them on the same concert, actually. And both concerts were just so fun to play. And you couldn't get any farther difference from each other as far as style and musicality and all that. Yeah, we talked about the challenges of Vivaldi, and one of them is clarity and all that. And with Piazzolla, it's just so fun to play because you can kind of really go at it with your instrument, kind of ham it up a little bit on occasions, which is a lot of fun. And some of the other movements, or I think can't remember, the spring, there's some violin solos in that too, where you could just really go for it. And it was a pleasure playing with Hector. I've only ever played the violin version of Piazzolla's Four Seasons. So it was really, really cool to see the difference. And I really thought that he brought the vibe of the tango, the quintet. It was just a lot of fun to play.
Cool, very cool. Hector, maybe just a little final reflection, and maybe if you think that there's any comparison between Vivaldi and the Piazzolla.
Well, actually, I think, of course, Astor Piazzolla was an admirer of Vivaldi and Stravinsky, and so there are some things, there are certain elements that will be in his mind when he composed the Four Seasons, but I don't think they really have too much in common, which I'm glad, because it will be, it's very difficult to depart from one piece or one composition and the other if they have similarities, and then you fall into doing something that is not your language and trying to make it into your language. If we used elements of the pieces of Vivaldi, I will not be able to play that. I know how to phrase in tango, and that's my language. So I think I'm glad that they are not similar in that sense. I'm glad that it's the instrumentation. Of course, bandoneon is the voice of Buenos Aires, and you have the Four Seasons from Buenos Aires, and that makes it already Buenos Aires. You don't need much more than that, but all the idiomatic elements that Piazzolla put into the piece, which sometimes are taken out of context when somebody sees the chicharra, like something that Sarah had to deal with at that moment. Is a percussive sound on the violin. Those are elements that Piazzolla put sporadically into his composition, but it's not the main essence of the piece. So the main essence of the piece is the melodic work and the harmonic work and the rhythmic work. So in that sense, I think also the contrast between the pieces that Piazzolla composed, the four pieces, is very different than Vivaldi, when it feels much more related one to the other. In Piazzolla, it's pure contrast. So I think, both are amazing pieces to sit down and listen. And for me particularly, I have a lot of fun playing Piazzolla because it's what I know, what I was born with, which is tango from Argentina.
Well, and you play it beautifully. So really,
thank you very much.
And bravo to Sarah too. I remember the Winter was wonderful. You did it beautifully. And so on that, and the fact that my light just went out because it's on a timer, I think it's a good time to finish. I would like to thank you both, Sarah and Hector, for being willing to do this today. And I thank you to Matthew Kramer for putting me in the hot seat today. I would like to remind everybody too that the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra season will be starting up in October. So we look forward to seeing you indoors, in person. Yay. So everybody, please take care. And I look forward to seeing you at the next ICO event. Bye-bye.